I remember the way the sun filtered through the dusty blinds that morning, casting thin golden lines across the floor, my backpack, and the half-empty coffee mug I'd left on the kitchen counter. The air was thick with the scent of old takeout and a tension I couldn't name yet. I'd just come home from a night shift, a 12-hour marathon of fluorescent lights and aching feet, only to find a red envelope tucked under the door with my name and hers scrawled in block letters across the front. I knew what it was even, before I opened it. I knew the weight of that kind of paper, the cheapness of the ink, and the suffocating way it seemed to demand attention from across the room. The eviction notice was dated 5 days earlier. I held it in my hands, my thumbs smudging the printed words, my chest rising and falling with uneven breaths as I tried to remember the last time we'd talked about rent. Rachel had sworn she'd paid it, twice. She even showed me fake confirmation, emails complete with the green paid check mark and the landlord's name copied and pasted into the header. I hadn't thought to double-check. I trusted her. I'd known Rachel since college, since the days of cheap boxed wine and midnight cramming sessions, and back then I would have sworn she was the most dependable person I knew. I sat down on the daki edge of the couch, still in my scrubs, still smelling like disinfectant and despair, and I reread the letter again and again. It said we were behind 2 months. That the landlord had tried to reach us, emails, calls, texts, and gotten no response. I hadn't seen a single one of those messages, because Rachel was the point of contact. She'd insisted on it. "I'm better with money stuff," she'd said with a laugh, the kind of confident smile that always made people believe her. I used to admire that about her. Now I could barely breathe past the pounding in my chest. The anger came slow. It was thick and sludgy, like cold oil moving through my veins. It mixed with disbelief, with heartbreak, with the exhaustion of carrying too much trust in someone who hadn't deserved it. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. Instead, I stood up, walked to my room, closed the door, and curled into the corner of my bed with the eviction notice still clutched in my hand. I stared at the wall until the shadows shifted, until the quiet turned unbearable. When Rachel came home, she was singing. Some bubblegum pop song, half off key, the kind of tune that got stuck in your teeth. She dropped her bag on the floor and called out for me, cheerful as ever. "Hey, babe, you won't believe what happened at work." Her voice faltered when she saw me, when she noticed the paper on the coffee table and the way I looked at her like I didn't even know who she was anymore. She tried to lie again. Of course she did. Said it was a mistake, a mix-up, probably the landlord's fault. "They're always doing stuff like this," she said, waving it off with a flick of her wrist. "I'll call them. It's not a big deal." But her eyes didn't meet mine. Her voice had that brittle edge I knew from years of friendship. She was scared. And she should have been. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just asked her, in a voice colder than anything I'd ever used with her, to tell me the truth. And when she didn't, when she kept spinning her lies with shaking hands and 2 bright eyes, I walked out of the room. I left her there with her excuses and her lies and that pathetic little laugh she used when she thought charm could save her. Over the next few days, I did the work she should have done. I called the landlord. I confirmed everything. Not a single rent payment had been made in over 2 months. I asked for copies of everything: emails, texts, notices, warnings. I built a little archive of betrayal, of neglect, of the cracks she'd painted over with her glittering distractions, and I paid my half in full. I begged for time, begged for an extension, and the landlord, bless his tired soul, agreed. Rachel, meanwhile, was planning her birthday party, a massive thing. She'd rented out a rooftop bar, sent out digital invites with sparkles and gifts, ordered a custom cake shaped like her face. She walked around like nothing was wrong, like the floor under our feet wasn't about to give way. I watched her lie to our friends, to her co-workers, even to herself. It was breathtaking. The audacity of it. The theatrical performance of pretending everything was fine while our home sat on the edge of collapse. That's when the idea came to me. Quiet at first. Just a whisper in the dark corners of my mind. But it grew. It took shape. And the more I saw her laugh, the more I heard her talk about champagne and candles and rooftop fireworks, the more I realized I couldn't let her get away with it. I didn't plan it out like some grand scheme, at least not at first. It was just a thought, a flicker of spite and justice braided together, and once it took root, it was impossible to ignore. I contacted the landlord again, my voice calm, measured, almost gentle. I explained the situation, told him about the birthday party, the rooftop bar, the guest list packed with people who believed Rachel was some flawless golden girl. I asked very simply if he might consider serving her the papers there, in front of everyone, where her lies would unravel in the way they deserved. There was a long pause on the line. I could hear the landlord exhale, a slow, tired breath of a man who had probably dealt with too many Rachels in his life. Then he said, "Tell me where and when." That was all it took. A handful of words, and the plan was real, humming in my chest with a dangerous kind of energy. The day of the party dawned hot and heavy, the kind of late summer heat that sticks to your skin and turns everything sluggish and irritable. I dressed, carefully, pulling on my nicest jeans, a soft blouse, and shoes that didn't pinch. I did my hair, my makeup, crafting the armor I would need to walk into that rooftop and watch it all fall apart. Rachel had left earlier, bouncing out of the apartment with the kind of giddy excitement that would have been contagious once. I let her go without a word, just a small smile that she didn't even notice. The rooftop was already packed by the time I arrived. String lights glowed overhead, a canopy of tiny stars against the dusky sky. Laughter spilled like wine over the edges of conversations, and the music pulsed deep in my bones. I moved through the crowd slowly, greeting people. I half knew, weaving my way toward the center where Rachel held court like a queen. She wore a tight, shimmering dress that caught every bit of light and threw it back twice as hard. She was radiant, blinding, all teeth and champagne and shrieking laughter. I kept my distance at first, hovering near the bar, nursing a glass of water because my stomach churned too violently for anything stronger. I spotted the landlord almost immediately. He wasn't hard to miss, tall, slightly stooped, wearing a too-tight collared shirt and holding a manila envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. Our eyes met across the rooftop, and he gave the smallest nod, a quiet acknowledgement of the storm we were about to unleash. Rachel had just climbed onto a small platform near the center, raising her glass high above her head as someone handed her a microphone. Her voice, amplified and sugary, rang out over the rooftop. "I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. This year has been incredible, and it's only going to get better. I'm so lucky to have the best friends, the best job, and the best apartment," she laughed, tossing her hair like a movie star, oblivious, utterly unaware. I mean, what more could a girl ask for? That was the moment. The landlord moved forward, slipping through the crowd like a blade through silk. I held my breath, my heart pounding so hard I was sure someone would hear it. Rachel spotted him just as he reached the platform. Her smile wavered, confusion clouding her features for a split second before she dipped her head in a polite, drunken nod. She probably thought he was a caterer or a staff member with a birthday card. He didn't say a word. He simply handed her the envelope, thick and crumpled at the edges now. Rachel took it automatically, still smiling, still performing. But when she opened it, when she saw the words in stark black print, something in her face crumbled. It wasn't immediate. It cracked first at the corners of her mouth, then behind her eyes, then in the trembling of her hands as she tried to shove the papers back into the envelope like she could undo what she had seen. The music faltered. Conversations stuttered and stopped. The rooftop was suddenly a different kind of stage, and Rachel stood frozen in the spotlight, gasping like a fish pulled from water. Someone near the front asked too loudly, "What's going on?" And Rachel, God help her, tried to laugh. A high, broken sound that shattered whatever thin wall of pretense she had left. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just watched as she stumbled over words, trying to explain, trying to make a joke of it. But no one was laughing. Whispers whipped through the crowd like wildfire. Rent, eviction, liar, fraud. Her friends backed away, their faces slipping from curiosity into something colder. Disappointment, betrayal, disgust. I saw one girl, someone Rachel had known since high school, shake her head slowly and turn away. Rachel's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the rooftop, a sharp, brittle sound that seemed to echo against the concrete and the night sky. She bent to pick up the pieces with shaking fingers, cutting herself almost immediately, a bright bloom of red against her palm. I think she would have kept trying, kept clawing at the mess, if one of the bar staff hadn't gently ushered her aside, murmuring something too soft to hear. I stood there for a long moment, feeling nothing and everything all at once. It wasn't triumph that filled me. It wasn't satisfaction. It was something colder, something heavier. A grief for the friend I'd thought I had, and a grim acknowledgement that the girl on that rooftop, the one bleeding and sobbing and begging silent, apologies from a crowd that would never forgive her, had made her choices long before that night. The party didn't end all at once. It unraveled slowly, painfully, like a thread being pulled from a tightly woven sweater. People made excuses, whispered apologies, glancing nervously at Rachel's crumpled figure, and then at the exit as they slipped away into the thick night air. The rooftop emptied until only a few awkward, lingering guests remained, shuffling their feet and pretending to check their phones. I stayed rooted in my spot by the bar, watching it all, feeling both outside and inside the wreckage she had created. Rachel didn't look for me. She didn't even seem to realize I was still there. She sat on the platform steps, her ruined dress gathered awkwardly around her, pressing a napkin to her bleeding hand. Her mascara ran in black rivers down her cheeks, and her hair, so carefully styled hours ago, now clung in damp strands to her forehead. She wasn't the glittering girl she had pretended to be. She was just Rachel now, the raw, broken version she had tried so hard to hide from the world. The landlord was already gone, slipping away after doing what he came to do, his job finished, his presence just another ghost in the wreckage of her celebration. I thought about going to her, about saying something, anything, but the distance between us felt like an ocean. I remembered every lie she told, every smirk when I believed her, every excuse, every fake confirmation email. I remembered the nights I stayed late at work, thinking we were secure because she said we were. I remembered how she let me trust her, how easy it had been for her. Instead, I walked past her without a word. I let the soft tap of my shoes on the rooftop floor be the only sound between us. She didn't even lift her head. She just stayed there, a crumpled thing under the fairy lights that once made her shine. The elevator ride down was silent, save for the slow, hollow thud of my heart against my ribs. I kept my hands loose at my sides, my face blank, the taste of the evening bitter in my mouth. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, stripped of something I hadn't realized I still carried. A tiny, stubborn hope that maybe she would be sorry enough to fix it. But there are some things that sorry can't mend. Outside, the city buzzed obliviously, neon lights flickering, taxis honking, groups of people laughing drunkenly as they stumbled from bar to bar. Life didn't pause just because mine had tilted sideways. I slipped into the crowd like a stone sinking into a river, letting it wash over me. Every step away from the rooftop felt heavier, like I was dragging a part of myself behind me that I didn't want anymore. When I got home, the apartment was dark and still. Her shoes were by the door, her jacket slung carelessly over the back of the couch, the same way it had been 100 times before. I paused for a moment, staring at them, feeling the shape of our shared life sag under the weight of the truth. Then I moved quickly, methodically, fueled by a cold determination that had nothing left to do with anger and everything to do with survival. I packed her things into boxes, her books, her clothes, her endless collection of glittery accessories. I didn't sort or fold or linger. I didn't smell the sweaters for traces of her perfume or reread the notes we used to leave for each other on the fridge. I just packed, my hands steady, my heart a slow, dull drum in my chest. Every item into the box was a severed tie, a wound closed without ceremony. By the time I finished, the sun was beginning to rise, slanting pale light through the windows and turning the room a soft gray. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by boxes, feeling the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. I thought about sleeping, about curling up in my bed and letting the world blur for a few hours, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Instead, I sat down on the floor, knees drawn to my chest, and stared at the door, waiting for her to come. Home. I didn't know if she would be drunk, or crying, or furious. I didn't know if she would scream, or beg, or collapse. I only knew that she would have to face me one last time, and when she did, I would be ready. She came home just after 7, the morning sun fully risen, casting sharp golden beams that pierced through the apartment like judgment. I heard her footsteps in the hallway before the key turned in the lock, hesitant, dragging, like each step took a conscious decision. When the door finally creaked open, her silhouette filled the frame for a breathless second. She looked smaller, deflated. Her dress from the night before hung off her like it didn't recognize her anymore, and her heels dangled from her fingers like she didn't have the strength to wear them a moment longer. Her eyes met mine almost immediately. They were rimmed red, smeared black from dried mascara, and swollen from a night of crying, or rage, or maybe both. She didn't speak. Neither did I. We just stared, two ghosts trapped in the aftermath of a war no one had fully won. Then, slowly, her gaze slid from me to the boxes lining the wall. She blinked, swallowed. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. When she finally spoke, her voice was so hoarse it was almost unrecognizable. "You packed my stuff?" I nodded once. She stepped further inside, her bare feet soundless on the floor. Her eyes scanned the boxes, the labels hastily scrawled in black marker. Bathroom, books, closet. I didn't label anything memories or betrayals. There was no box for the night we stayed up until 3 a.m. crying about our parents. No box for the broken coffee mug we glued back together laughing. No place to put the pieces of the friendship we had built like a home, brick by brick, until she lit a match and let it burn. "You didn't even ask," she said finally, barely more than a whisper. "I didn't need to," I replied, my voice flat. "You made your choice when you lied to me. Repeatedly." She winced, like the truth physically hurt her. Maybe it did. Maybe guilt was finally gnawing through the pretty layers of denial she'd wrapped herself in. She walked over to the couch and sat down gingerly like she didn't recognize the furniture anymore. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. I was in a bad spot. I thought I'd catch up. Then it snowballed. I didn't know how to fix it. And instead of telling me, I cut in, "You faked payment confirmations, ignored messages from the landlord, and let me keep giving you half the rent while you spent it on dresses and parties." She had the nerve to cry then. Her shoulders shook, quiet sobs she tried to smother with the heels of her hands. "I was scared," she choked out, "and I didn't want you to hate me." I stood up slowly. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage, had burned out long ago. What I felt now was something quieter, heavier, the mourning of something precious. You didn't want me to hate you, so you lied to me. You betrayed me. You let me find out we were being evicted from a piece of paper. Rachel, you stood in front of our friends and pretended like you weren't ruining my life. Her sobs got louder, but I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. That part of me, the one that used to be her best friend, her sister and everything but blood, had died in that moment on the rooftop. I thought it'd be funny, she whimpered suddenly. The party. I thought it'd be fun. I didn't know he'd actually do it in front of everyone. My stomach turned. You thought getting served was going to be funny? She shook her head wildly, panic flashing in her eyes. No, I didn't mean it like that. Just, God, I don't know. I was trying to keep everything from falling apart. Well, you failed, I said, and the words landed like stones between us. And now you're moving out. She looked around like the walls might protest, like the apartment might cry out that it still belonged to her. But it didn't. It never would again. When? She asked, her voice hollow. Today. I crossed my arms. I already arranged a mover. You can stay with your sister or one of those friends you were busy impressing. I don't care where you go, Rachel. Just not here. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then finally, she nodded. Once, twice, her eyes glassy and empty. Okay. She stood, legs shaking slightly, and walked toward the nearest box. I watched her crouch down, open the lid, and begin placing things back into her bag. It was the slow, defeated work of someone who knew she'd lost everything and had no one to blame but herself. I didn't help. I didn't speak. I just stood there, breathing, steady, strong. By the time she finished, it was nearly noon. The movers came. She didn't cry again, at least not in front of them. When the last box disappeared out the door, she paused, turned to look at me. Do you think we'll ever talk again? She asked. I thought about the years we'd spent laughing, crying, living together like a chosen family. I thought about the lies, the betrayal, the look on her face. When the envelope was handed to her in front of 100 people, I thought about how silence had become louder than any apology. No, I said. She left without another word. I locked the door behind her, leaned my forehead against the wood, and exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for weeks. The apartment was quiet, empty, free, and for the first time in a long time I wasn't afraid. I was finally home,